What's wavy? Welcome to the Buzz Report, your favorite web series spotlighting everything Georgia Tech football. I'm your host, Moon, a credentialed media member and a new Georgia Tech fan. On today's spotlight episode, what's the latest buzz on the recruiting trail? Official visit season is in the air, and Georgia Tech hosted key in-state local prospects over the weekend. I give you my takeaways about camp and my trip to Bobby Dodd for the spring game. Schedule makers reveal clean old-fashioned hates, date, and time. I give you the good, bad, and ugly. This episode is always brought to us by College Football Nation. But before we get started, THWG. Being a credentialed media member through CFB Nation allows me the opportunities to see college football from the sidelines on a week-to-week basis. Last year, I had the honor of attending multiple Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets games. I saw the Boston College collapse. I was midfield holding onto my camera for dear life as I captured fans storming the field, celebrating the upset over North Carolina. I was there in cold against Syracuse, where the Syracuse Orangemen chose to not attempt to pass over 10 yards for the entire game. I saw Georgia Tech on the road in Death Valley on Military Appreciation Day in a sea of purple. I got to cover the Yellow Jackets quite a bit. But the game that still gives me chills more than anyone is my first clean old-fashioned hate. Georgia Tech fans hate the other schools so much that after a win versus Syracuse that I attended, you would have thought that we had played the Bulldogs. I sang "To Hell with Georgia" with my newfound Georgia Tech family, and in those moments I realized how deeply rooted this rivalry and this bad blood really is. College football is a vastly changing ecosystem of haves and the have-nots. Recently, Georgia has been the haves, while Tech supporters have been the have-nots in the football world. The last time Georgia Tech actually reached this status of haves potential was Kirby Smart's first season at UGA, where we buzzed out of Athens with a 28-27 victory. And in 2024, history will have every opportunity to repeat itself. Georgia Tech fans that I talked to looked at the game from 2023 and say, we were so close to beating them. We showed them that we don't fear them. But being on the sidelines for that game, the intensity was unlike anything that I've ever seen before or that I've witnessed during year one of the CFB Nation tour. In fact, the fans showed up early. Before kickoff, it was a mix of excitement and frustration to see that much red in attendance. It reminded me of a Playboy Cardi track, whole lot of red. But the student section needs a little bit more credit for showing up, showing out, and setting the tone. Tech fans were loud as they have been all season long, and Bobby Dodd Stadium was at full capacity to watch Georgia escape out of Atlanta with a victory. The harsh reality is this: two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that that was the toughest effort that you will get from the Yellow Jackets all season long outside of the bowl game versus UCF and the miracle in Miami. It's also true that all rules go out of the rule book for rivalry games. And we got a chance to see that up close and personal because UGA decided to show up and rest their players, including Ra Thomas, Lad McConkey, Dejon Edwards. Now, it's also true that Georgia Tech played UGA tougher than most schools on their schedule in 2023. It's true that Tech made it extremely tough despite being banged up themselves, dealing with some injuries that they still got to bounce back from. While it's also true that our defense got shredded by the vanilla run game that was led by Kenny McIntosh, who had himself an all-star performance on ABC. No matter how you dice it or slice it, it has to be uncomfortable feeling being a Bulldogs fan, knowing that the Swarm is growing in numbers and the talent on the field, that gap is shrinking with every passing season. Talking to some Georgia fans after this game, they admitted that Georgia Tech has the identity of their coach. They also pointed out clear as day, this program is gritty, tough, and young. While that is true, it is also true that it was a year too soon to fully anticipate the upset that the entire nation wanted. Georgia Tech travels to Athens and the confines of Sanford Stadium for clean old-fashioned hate on Black Friday at 7:30 p.m. live on ABC. The good, just like seasons past, and in 2023, the national audience will get the pleasure of seeing Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets be on a national stage against the nation's new gold, quote-unquote, standard. The litmus test game will have new stakes with many possibilities, from a possible ACC championship berth that we're talking about being on the horizon to, just like last year, just getting over the hump of bowl eligibility, to even the worst case scenario, having all of it blow up the smithereens and still have a game against Georgia be the litmus test game where it doesn't matter as long as you beat Georgia. Being in the thick of the college football playoff scenarios, aspiring for the ACC championship in an expanded team, division-less year, is how you compete for the state of Georgia. Having the nation be awoken to the Swarm is great and good. They have to maximize the national TV presence and audience, and giving them a gritty performance is not going to be enough. Getting the dub is definitely going to be enough. Now, let's talk about the bad. The bad is the conversation that clean old-fashioned hate rivalry is dying in this new age of college football, and that playoff expansion, NIL, and a myriad of other complex topics that continuously impact college football daily. I mean, this rivalry started in 1893. The Rambling Wreck was created because they harassed us after we beat them and trolled them. THWG in the chat. In order for a rivalry to be at its apex of burning fury and desire, the passion, both teams have to be at their apex. If one is dominating for stretches at a time while the other is fighting for just relevance within their conference or just in their landscape of college football by itself, it makes me think to myself, is this as really good as the product that we could possibly get? Wins and losses don't always determine the quality of a rivalry, though. This is the case for schedule makers, because ask yourself this question. Why is it that the college football higher-ups, along with ABC, didn't announce that Georgia Tech would be playing Georgia at 7:30 p.m. on ABC in 2023 until 2 weeks before the game? This season, ABC is fully aware that Black Friday will feature Georgia Tech traveling to Sanford. Rising stock, rising expectations raise all ships, and the national outlook of Tech seems to be raising the eyebrows of the higher-ups that maybe Georgia Tech can be for real. 2024 is definitely the time to be for real. The ugly is traveling between the hedges into enemy territory with a fan base that makes it mockery out of normal schools. So how much worse are they going to treat us, their rival? Outside of Lane Stadium, that will be the toughest environment that Georgia Tech will have to endure in the year of 2024. Now, let's talk about the spring. It was a sensational afternoon on the flats. The CFB Nation Spring Game Tour traveled to Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta, where we got about 11,000 fans in attendance who also had their plenty of options to explore because they had to choose between Virginia Tech baseball, who was in town for a weekend series. We also had Senior Day for men's tennis versus Virginia, and softball hosted Louisville at Mulborn Field. April 13th is going to definitely go down as one of the busiest and most massive days for Georgia Tech athletics in recent history. The jam-packed festivities that we got a chance to endure on that day culminated with Team Swarm winning 27-24 against Team Wreckham at historic Grant Field. The things that you need to know leaving out of this contest heading into Florida State. Jamal Haynes can be a feature running back in Buster Faulkner's system. Jamal Haynes rushed for 1,059 yards in 2023, averaging 6 yards a pop after converting from wide receiver, becoming the Yellow Jackets' first 1,000-yard rusher since 2017, Kervonte Barnes. Many around the country speculated if Jamal Haynes has the versatility to be a 3-down back for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And in the spring, he showed immediately that he can do it through his pass-catching acumen. He can do it with his uncanny vision. He has unwavering confidence that's not going to be shaken, whether he's with the first team, second team, or even doing special teams. Chunk plays is his calling card. It made his presence absolutely known on the flats because he provides something that Georgia Tech fans have been wanting for a very long time at the running back position, that dog-type mentality. It was a pleasant surprise to see Jamal Haynes burst in real time because he opened the game scoring with a touchdown, stopping on a dime, juking the defender before pressing the accelerator. He hit his head on a goalpost. The bands hit their instruments, and it's more evident that Jamal Haynes took this spring by the horns and screamed, "I'm him!" Which leads me to my next point. Zach Pyron might be the best backup quarterback in the entire country, and he's playing with the confidence that's growing with every single snap. Zach Pyron impressed me in spring 2023 and spring 2024. Zach Pyron extended plays outside the pocket, targeted wide receivers in rhythm. I mean, anything you wanted him to do, he did it. He has a natural arm. His decision making is only getting better. He has definite chemistry with his wide receivers. He finished with the team high in passing yards, going 11 for 20 for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. And the dual threat ability of all quarterbacks was showcased more than anything in this Buster Faulkner offense. Like, the fact that these quarterbacks bring an element to this offense of dual threat capability just uncaps the potential for explosiveness in Georgia Tech's offense. But speaking of my favorite word, Georgia Tech accumulated 751 yards of total offense with 4 quarterbacks. You heard that right. 4 finding the end zone through the skies. This offense isn't a one-year gimmick. It's lightning without the restrictions of being confined to a bottle. It's not a one-man show. It's a collected, assorted skill sets in the hands of an ever-growing coaching staff, which is getting closer and closer with every passing day. You had 6 different players scored a touchdown in Georgia Tech's return to the flats. Not only did that make the fan base happy, but it made the wide receiver core happy. The wide receivers put on a delightful display with Leo Blackburn, Abdul Janae, Malik Rutherford, Zion Taylor, all contributing to this firework. The next thing you need to know, Eric Singleton Jr. is still my key player for 2024, and all eyes will be on him as the sophomore makes his return to the flats. Now, he could have entertained any possible suitors in the murking dating pool that is known as collegiate sports transfer portal. But ESJ recommitted his allegiance to us, the people of Georgia Tech, sparking instant fanfare and a love that only got deeper. Georgia Tech has insurmountable stock in their superstar wide receiver, Eric Singleton Jr. After posting 43 receptions and 6 touchdowns in 2023, this man is looking ready to take that next jump. But I would be remiss if I don't talk about the spring game without mentioning redshirt freshman Chris Elko's 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a highlight reel day that was a cherry on top of his spring camp. Aiden Burr looks like he's him, and he was thrust into the spotlight, and he delivered. I mean, the best scoring play of 2024 spring game happened in the first quarter after we had an early drive stall out for Team Wreckham. Aiden Burr comes onto the field, has a 62-yard field goal. I'm standing right next to the band, and we are looking at each other. Watch the ball go through from 62 yards away, and it's more than good with a little bit more distance. Undoubtedly, Aiden Bird is a player to remember when the season approaches. Make sure you remember his name. Haynes King accumulated 99 yards, 1 touchdown. He finished 11 for 15 from the pocket. And outside of that deflected tip drill interception, the weather matched Haynes King's day on that day. Light and airy. If he can get the turnovers just to a minimum, the sky's the limit to how far this offense can go. In his first season at Georgia Tech, though, Haynes King tallied 3,579 yards of total offense, trailing only Joe Hamilton from 1999, who had 3,794 yards for the single season total offense record at Georgia Tech. That's exciting if you're a Georgia Tech fan. Tyler Santucci, he comes to the flats after serving from Duke at 2023, where he contributed to the ACC's top scoring defense with the Blue Devils. Also got a first look at Warren Burrell. The graduate transfer made a statement in the game, providing instant bravado, tenacity to the cornerback position that we desperately need. This play brought some juice to the sideline, and after the huge change of momentum defensively, we started to see the pace pick up. Yellow Jackets' leading tackler was junior linebacker Jackson Hamilton, who filled the stat sheet with 7 big plays. The spring in the rearview mirror, we are all systems go, focused on Dublin, Ireland against the defending Atlantic Coast Conference champions, Florida State Seminoles. As Georgia Tech looks like it can be for real. August 24th definitely can't come soon enough. Georgia Tech welcomed many recruits to Atlanta for the start of official visits with expectations to expand their 2025 recruiting class. Here's the latest that we know from the in-state prospects. Let's start with 3-star prospect Sam Turner from Decatur, Georgia, by way of Southwest DeKalb High School, who will be visiting this upcoming weekend due to something coming up that put a pause on his visit. June 21st is an important date for this young man because BYU is the only main competitor outside of Georgia Tech for this coveted 3-star prospect. Coming up next, 3-star athlete JP Powell talked most about his fit within Buster Faulkner's offense as the element that stands out the most from his recent official visit. It seems like the official visit was catered to showcasing to JP what his role would be at Georgia Tech, and that type of certainty will only work in our favor in the long run. Mississippi State has been putting the most pressure on JP with an official visit anticipated in the next couple weeks. I've been hearing that JP wants to make a decision in June. Out of Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Douglas, interior offensive lineman Xavier Canales called his visit at Georgia Tech amazing. And the plan is for a summertime commitment for Zay, but Cincinnati is coming this weekend. Georgia State is on June the 21st. Those are the other planned visits for this 3-star glue guy piece in the interior offensive line. Coming up next, Fort Mill, South Carolina, Indian Land safety Omarion Davis raved about the hospitality of the players that he experienced when he came on his official visit. He still has Boston College expected for an official visit this upcoming weekend, but it appears that Davis is letting pieces fall into place before he actually makes his decision. Of the 3-star prospects, Gabe Smith from Alpharetta, Georgia, by way of Cambridge, didn't make it in town for this official visit this weekend. But the latest is Miami is still on the radar with the June 21st visit. So we have to watch and pay attention to Gabe Smith from Alpharetta, Georgia. The guy, the elephant in the room, the one that you waited all for. Wide receiver Evan Haynes out of Roswell, Georgia, by way of Fellowship Christian School, is a priority for the Yellow Jackets. In his official visit, Haynes was able to talk in depth about how meeting with Georgia Tech players and coaches for an extensive amount of time was what he liked the most about his visit. He also spoke in depth about the people at Georgia Tech, saying that the extensive amount of time, the excitement of others about the program, and the energy heading into the right direction were all things that he loved from his visit. This is huge news coming out for this 4-star prospect. And Evan Haynes, he has a visit with North Carolina coming up this weekend, Kansas on June the 12th, and also Harvard on June the 18th. A couple of days later, he finishes his official visits on June the 21st by visiting Colorado. We are in Evan Haynes' top 4, ladies and gents. That alone in itself is a blessing. Locking up a kid out of Fellowship Christian School who is just a stat machine, it would be wonders for the Georgia Tech program. In other news, one notable player that we welcome as a new commitment this weekend was Jimmy Bryson, 3-star interior offensive lineman from Chattanooga, Tennessee, committed this weekend after his visit. So shout out to Jimmy Bryson, 3-star prospect. And one other interesting commitment that we have to wait on this upcoming week is Connor Rush from Wesleyan, about 30 minutes away from Bobby Dodd Stadium. Connor Rush actually has offers from Air Force, Wofford, Yale, Pennsylvania, and now Georgia Tech. This all happened after Georgia Tech went to visit Wesleyan during the spring and saw Connor running routes. They invited him to camp on May the 30th, where Coach Brock and Coach Faulkner watched Rush just completely ball out. They called Connor the very next day and offered him a scholarship to play at Tech. You can't put a price tag on the commitment. You can't put a price tag on the commitment of the coaching staff that they have to making recruits feel one with them and one with the team, one with the staff already. Maybe a week before we figure out what is the news with Connor Rush, but he's somebody that we should keep our eyes on and keep our eyes glued to as more news comes out during this official visit buzz that we have coming up. I appreciate all of you tuning in to this debut episode of the Buzz Report podcast, brought to you by College Football Nation, your one-stop shop for college football 365. And on that notification bell for the next episode, subscribe and stay connected with everything college football on CFB Nation. Stay connected with me and the Buzz Report by following me on Twitter at CFB Moon. New favorite source for all things Georgia Tech football, the Buzz Report. I'm signing out. One.